Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipson. Today's guest is James Hope-Gill, the CEO of Skateboard GB. James has a background from football and has been the CEO of Sheffield and Hallamshire County FA. Since 2017, he's working for Skateboard GB and leads the development for the new Olympic sport in Great Britain. Get ready to learn how Skateboard GB started, how the Olympic status has affected the sport, and what the Sky Brown effect is. James Hope-Gill, welcome to the Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you. Hello, good morning. It's good to be here.
I'm glad to have you on. So first of all, how are you doing this morning?
Yeah, good. So hopefully coming out of COVID. So I've not had it personally, but my son's got it at the moment and he's isolating. But yeah, no, the sun's shining and it's a new year, which is really exciting for Skateboard GB. Really looking forward to it. Got a lot of things going on. So yeah, in a good place.
Yes, definitely. And let's jump right into it. You are the CEO of Skateboard GB.
Yeah.
First of all, what do you do there as your role as CEO? And if you can talk a little bit about Skateboard GB.
Yeah, certainly. So the role involves a lot of things, sort of master of nothing, but know everything. But no, seriously, I think the main roles are around strategy. So what's the direction of the organization going? Are we going in the right direction? That I'm sort of heading up all the funding. So as we look for public funding or commercial funding and partnerships, I head that up. I also head up and make sure that we're doing everything right from a governance point of view and from a financial point of view. There's a lot of statutory requirements that a governing body has in the UK, and those sort of land on my shoulders. There's the lobbying. There's creating and leading the team, managing the team. So there's a whole host of things that I do. It tends to be less operational now. So as we grow, so when there was only one or two members of staff, there was quite a lot of operational things that I was doing. But as we've grown, so we're now at 9 and looking to recruit some more, then my role becomes more strategic and making sure that I'm managing the staff, leading them, and we're going in the right direction.
That's very interesting. And skateboarding is a unique sport, and it differs a bit from maybe the more traditional sport in the way that it's also a lifestyle.
Absolutely.
And also a competitive sport. So why is there a need for a federation for skateboarding, in your opinion?
I think that because of that competition element, that's sort of a motivator, I guess. So if a sport wants to be in the Olympics, as skateboarding now is, then there's a need for an international federation and national federation. So that's one sort of consideration. But I think it's bigger for skateboarding, and the need is around, how can we get better facilities? How can we get better funding into the sport? How can we, make sure that the community that's out there, which is fantastic and has been growing for the last 40 years, how can it be more sustainable? How can it grow? And part of that, there's a credibility and legitimacy issue. So once there's a governing body in place, then from an external point of view, skateboarding is able to engage better with government, better with local authorities, with landowners. So the feedback that we're getting from the community is that actually now there's a governing body, local authorities will engage with local community groups or individuals that want to get funding. So I think there's a lot of things around best practice. So how do you make sure that the people coming into skateboarding that are new know that it's a safe, fun environment. So there's a whole host of reasons, I think, but we're very, very conscious that it is a lifestyle. The purpose of skateboarding isn't to beat someone. The purpose is to skate as much as you can, to get better in community and on amazing spaces. It's not to beat an opponent. Yes, there is a competitive element for a very small number of skaters. So culture is very important, and we're continually asking ourselves, are we going to compromise the integrity of the culture by doing X, Y, and Z? And so we're always reflecting and making sure that what we do is for the best of skateboarding. And I think, again, a difference between us and other governing bodies is around our role and purpose. The community's been around the UK for 40, 50 years. It's amazing. It's huge. There's an infrastructure there. There's an industry around it. So what right have we got to have a governing body suddenly created and then sort of have the attitude of, well, you've got to now do what we say because we're the governing body. So a lot of governing bodies, the relationship they have with participants isn't necessarily how we want our relationship. And we very much see that purpose as we're here to add value. The community's there, it's already there, it's doing amazing things. How can we then add value to skateboarding? And that's really our motivation.
Yeah, you mentioned the Olympics there, and of course from the competitive side of the sport, that's a huge thing to be an Olympic sport. And it puts the sport in front of millions and millions of people to see it, and maybe this attracts more skateboarders for the next generation to come, and so on and so forth. But how was that balance in the community of skateboarding? I'm sure that the people who are more skateboarding is a culture group. Maybe they were not as excited about it becoming an Olympic sport. So how have you balanced this?
So absolutely. And I think so when you look at sort of a fundamental role that a governing body plays, you're there to try and support the whole of the sport. So there's going to be people that don't want skateboarding, and then in the Olympics, and then there's people that do want skateboarding in the Olympics. So absolutely, we had a focus on how can we identify the skaters that can potentially compete for GB and go on that qualification pathway to get to the Olympics. And we managed to get some funding from UK Sport to do that. And as we got that funding, again, we were very conscious of the culture, and very conscious that we had to do things in the right way for skateboarding, not just mirror or copy what other governing bodies or other sports do, because what's right for them isn't necessarily right for skateboarding. So that's what it goes back to every time. Everything that we do, we're sort of asking ourselves the question: is this right for skateboarding? And as we build a world-class performance program, is it right for skateboarding, and what is the right way of doing that? I think that hopefully the question's been answered, whether skateboarding should be in the Olympics or not, and whether it's beneficial to skateboarding. Certainly in the UK, the conversations that we're now able to have with government and with landowners and local government and potential partners has been lubricated because of that. And that means that the conversations we're having about facilities and skatable spaces and getting skateboarding into schools and all the other things that we want to do in terms of to help sustainability and growth have become a lot easier because of that, almost legitimizing skateboarding, because there's a lot of, from an external point of view, there's a lot of misunderstanding what skateboarding is. And because we're here as a governing body and it's been in the Olympics, we've been able to articulate to those external organizations actually the fantastic thing that skateboarding is. It's a lifestyle, it's a culture, and it's a sport.
Could you name some of the misconceptions that you think that some people have about skateboarding? And also, could those negatively affect the chances of getting funding when you're out there, for example? So I think that the misunderstandings is that, when you talk to people involved in the sports industry in terms of funders, other organizations, normally when they're dealing with a sport, there's a club structure and a league structure and membership and all these structures that have been built up over many decades. With skateboarding, that wasn't there. So our first conversations with government were there was that lack of understanding. Well, what is skateboarding? And when you look at the public and you talk to people that aren't involved in skateboarding, skateboarders possibly could have been seen as, well, they're just kids on the street being a nuisance, because there was a complete lack of understanding. And there still is, that actually when they're skating, there's some amazing things going on, and the level of tricks and the physicality that's involved in skateboarding is phenomenal. But that's not necessarily seen by members of the public, for example, who just see groups of skaters on the streets. Because bear in mind that street skateboarding is a huge part of skate culture. Yes, there are skate parks, but skating on the street is huge, and it's an integral part of skateboarding, and that's just not understood. And so until we can articulate that properly and actually show the benefits of that, and that's where there's misunderstanding. I see. I've had a previous episode here about esports, and I see some similarities because there the question is esport a sport? Should it be a federation? Because maybe it's more of a game, it's not a sport. The difference between skateboarding though and esport, I feel, is that kids nowadays are online. More and more kids are spending more time there instead of being outside as it used to be a few decades ago. How are you seeing this trend and how is that affecting skateboarding?
I think that the fantastic thing about skateboarding is that you can do it anywhere, and you don't need a specific facility or very expensive equipment to skate. And we found that in COVID, when there was the restrictions in the summer of 2020, the UK sold out of skateboards, of complete sets, because so many people who were locked up effectively, but were allowed to skate for an hour or to exercise for an hour a day, were turning to skateboarding, because you can skateboard at home in your garden or out on the street or wherever, in isolation. And that's one of the beauties. You can skate anywhere for as long or little as you want. It's not something that you do for 90 minutes on a Saturday or a Sunday against somebody. You skate whenever you want to with somebody. And so that's just a huge benefit. And the physicality needed, the balance, the coordination, the strength is just absolutely phenomenal. But I think it's that absolute flexibility, and that's what the generation that's coming up like. They don't necessarily want structure, and so we're seeing a lot of people come into skateboarding because it is so flexible, and they can almost create their own terms, as opposed to being told this is what you do, when you do, how you do it.
That's a good point. And another thing that is important when, attracting kids and new people to a sport is role models.
Yeah.
And if I am not that into skateboarding myself, and if you ask me, name one skateboarder, I know Tony Hawk and that's it. But for example, now after the Olympics, you had the amazing Sky Brown, the 13-year-old girl who won the bronze. And are there more role models coming up, you think, that will help bring more people to the sport?
Absolutely. We've certainly seen we'll call it the Sky Brown effect in the UK. Many girls and women as well wanting to get into skateboarding. So traditionally, there's probably, the mix has been sort of 90% male, 10% female. And we're certainly seeing a huge amount of girls and women wanting to get into skateboarding. And that's anecdotal insight. We haven't got sort of proper numbers around that, but certainly skate parks and skate shops are telling us that they've seen a significant increase. So she's been an absolutely fantastic role model. And for boys as well, and for men, because I think what she's done is she's shown what skateboarding is and what it can be. And so it doesn't matter what gender you are, you can, or what age you are, you can still be involved in skateboarding, and that's really exciting. And we're working as we create our talent pathway in the UK, and as we start to work out how we identify talented skaters, how we support them to reach their potential. There's absolutely some people coming through. I'm not going to name names because we're working with quite a wide group, but there's some really, really exciting skaters. Some of them are really young, and some of them are a little bit older. But I'm really very excited about the potential of skateboarding in the UK from a competitive point of view, as well as from that grassroots supporting the whole of the community point of view as well. There's some really exciting stuff going on, because as you have role models, it's not only people that want to skate that see that, it's also government, local government, landowners and potential partners. So that's really, really exciting.
That's true. I had a question about the split between male and female, but you mentioned it there that it used to be like 90-10, and now this is starts to equal out a little bit.
Yeah.
You mentioned that one of your roles as the CEO is the strategy going forward. So I assume that this is one part of it, but can you mention some of the other goals that you have as a federation?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've done is we've created a 12-year strategy. So this isn't us saying this is what's going to happen in skateboarding. This is our strategy to say this is how Skateboard GB is going to hopefully benefit and add value to skateboarding in the UK over the next 12 years. Okay, so that's really clear to sort of make that distinction. And I think what we did over a number of years is sort of internally and externally working with the community is try and look at what are the fundamental things that are important to skateboarding and skateboarders? And it's effectively, skaters want to skate as much as possible, get as good as they can be in community on amazing spaces. So there actually are 4 pillars. Skate more, so skate as much as you can, and what opportunities can we provide for people to do that? Skate better. So how do we enable all skaters to get better, but also those talented ones, how do we support them so they can be, good internationally and achieve? In community, so how can we connect? And there's a bit of a digital piece there. How can we connect community? How can we work with community groups to make them, give them more capacity and capability? And then amazing spaces, so skatable spaces. So how can we really make a difference in terms of making sure that there's enough skatable spaces in the UK that are of the right standard, in the right place, in the right condition? And so that's basically, that's what we're going to do. And we've got objectives underneath each of those, but it's an exciting time. And what we've done is we've split the 12 years into 3 periods. So the first period is a 4-year period of building. So as we build the governing body, as we create relationships, as we build an environment and culture and programs, that becomes the foundation for then delivering and transforming. So we're in phase 1 at the moment, which is building. So we're expecting growth in the governing body. And that's what the funding that we're getting from UK Sport and Sporting will allow us to do. And so there'll be a lot of strategy work in there. So we're going to do a piece of work next year around facilities. So where is every skate park and every skatable space in the UK? What condition is it in? What standard is it? What are the obstacles? And then we can start looking at, well, where are the gaps? So where do we need to put some skate parks or get investment to put skate parks? Where are the skate parks that need upgrading or replacing? And that's really exciting. That's never been done before in the country. And that gives us the opportunity of getting that really good insight so we can make investment decisions and arguments to government to pull investment in for skateboarding. So that's a big piece of work that we're going to be doing this year, which is really, really exciting.
2 things that I thought about now. First of all, when you say the skate parks, are these outdoor skate parks or are you also having like indoor parks? Because I know in UK it's a similar climate as to where in Sweden where I live, and it's not maybe that attractive to be outside some part of the years.
No. Yeah. So in the UK, there's about 1,700 skate parks. The vast majority are outdoors. So there's about 70 that are indoors, and they're owned by either commercial organisations or charities or local authorities. And so it's absolutely indoor and outdoor. So the audit and the strategy will look at provision right the way across the board. So it's also going to look at things like, well, where are the indoor skate parks? Which of the indoor skate parks can help support our talent program? And so, can we use certain parts to, develop those talented skaters to help them reach their potential, or do we need new ones? And we're also having discussions around a national centre. There isn't an indoor skate park in the UK that meets international standards, and so we're talking with government about getting investment to create a centre that actually is international standard, so that we can allow talented skateboarders in the UK to practice on a regular basis on the sort of skate parks they're going to get when they're competing internationally. And again, that's really exciting for us.
Yeah, definitely. And the second thought I had there was, now when you're doing all this strategy work in the 12-year plan, is there any benchmarks from, for example, other countries, US? Are there other countries that have federations for skateboarding that you could collaborate with or like exchange ideas and so on?
Yeah, so there's certainly a number of, and I'm having conversations with different national federations sort of all the time. And yeah, so absolutely, it's about collaboration, and they could be skateboarding national federations abroad, or they could be non-skateboarding national federations. So I think we can absolutely learn from other sports. What we've got to be careful, and I said right at the beginning, is that things are right for skateboarding. So what I think we can absolutely nick really good ideas from other national federations, whether in this country or abroad, that are from outside skateboarding, and adapt them and mold them so that they're good for skateboarding. But collaboration has to be at the heart of what we're doing. We don't work in isolation. And there's a number of national federations in skateboarding around the world that I'm talking to, and we might be a little bit ahead of some of them, and so just in terms of how we've been able to structure and how we've been able to get funding from government, and so I'm having conversations with a couple, just trying to give them ideas and show them how they might be able to work to get that government support as well. So it's good.
This episode is sponsored by InSport Education, the online business school for sport. They offer a range of different courses, for example, Foundations of Sport Business, Private Equity in Sport, and much, much more. As a listener to this podcast, you get 10% off all of their courses using the code SportsManagementPodcast10. Click the link in the description below and sign up today. In the second segment, usually we like to get to know the guest a little more. So if we're talking about you and your career, your leadership style and so on. So first of all, I know that actually your background is mostly from football.
Yeah.
So if you can just talk about your career and how you ended up with the Skateboard GB.
Yeah, so I worked within sort of the Football Association, football structures for about 20 years. And was it 20 years? Blimey. No, it can't have been that long. No, 12, 14 years. lose track of time. And no, it was about, when did I graduate? This is terrible. I should know this. It was about 10, 12 years in football, and decided to leave. So I left and just started doing some consultancy. So helping either governing bodies or charities or sporting organizations just grow and be sustainable and find new opportunities. And I was approached by somebody who I knew through football, who was a relative of a skateboarder in the UK. And they were, quite a high profile street skater, and had some conversations with him. And he was just talking around the fact that skateboarding had tried to set up governing body in the UK 4 or 5 times over sort of 10, 15 years. And they hadn't really got past first base. Yes, there'd been some national championships and some really good stuff going on, but the whole sort of approach and everything that a governing body needed to do, there just wasn't the expertise in skateboarding to make that happen, because there was a lack of understanding of the sporting landscape and the bureaucracy, because there's a lot of bureaucracy sort of tied up in a governing body. So I was asked to help and sort of lead that project, and spent time talking with various people in the community, and we got to the stage where actually we felt that we could create something that was really tangible and worthwhile. So we set up Skateboard England in 2015, and as we did that, I was sort of helping on a part-time basis as a consultant, but they asked me whether I would then lead the organisation and be CEO, and so I was chief exec of Skateboard England from September 2015. After it was announced in 2016 that skateboarding was going to be in the Olympics in Tokyo, there was then the need to set up GB. And so I then worked with Scotland, Northern Ireland and the England guys to create GB, and again was asked to lead that, and so being chief exec of that. And what we did a year ago is we actually restructured, so Skateboard England became part of GB to stop duplication and make things more efficient. So that's how I got involved. I was sort of in the right place at the right time and knew the right person, and they felt that I had the right skill set to come in and support skateboarding. And to be fair, I've not looked back. And no, I'm not a skateboarder, but I'm actually quite passionate about it. And you get sort of sucked in, and I'm very invested, sort of emotionally and personally, within the governing body, and really want to see it work and grow and reach its potential. And I think we will do that. And there's some really exciting times coming up.
Definitely. It will be very interesting to follow. If we talk about your leadership style, you said that you are a few people now in the GB, but approximately how does the organization look? And how would you say that your leadership style is like?
Okay, yeah. So in terms of how the organization looks, we've obviously got a board of directors, and I'm responsible to the board of directors and the chair, and then the staff that we lead. We've almost got sort of two sections, if you like. One is around performance and around that supporting skateboarders to be the best they can be. And so we've got a couple of members of staff involved in that. And we're as we create the talent pathway and support skaters through Olympic qualification, that's a key part of what we're doing. But then on the other side, we have people involved in engagement with the community, so social media and creating stories and telling stories. And then there's the app and the website and some of the other stuff that we're doing. And then there's really working with the community. So how can we help the community groups and the community to be as good as they can be? How can we create spaces? So we pulled in a great partnership with Habito, and we've got some sponsorship to actually invest financially in some skateboard spaces, which is amazing. So, and then there's me that sort of overall sort of sits around that and makes sure that we're sort of doing the right things with that governance piece and that funding piece and that strategic piece. And we've got some admin support and some finance support as well. So it's a very small team at the moment. And we've had a new member of staff start this week who's involved in commercial partnerships. So he's now actively looking to see whether there's organisations that want to engage with us to meet their objectives, but our objectives as well, and see whether we can get some revenue in to support that. And so that's how it looks, really. There's sort of those two areas, but we're very intertwined. So both affect each other. And there's a lot of cross working there. So really exciting. And yeah, we've grown. So this time last year, there was 3 of us, and we're now up to 10. So there's been a bit of growth in this last year. And I think management or leadership style, I guess it changes dependent on circumstances. But what I really like to do is to allow members of staff to grow. So if I can give some direction and support and set expectations, what I really like to do is see those members of staff take ownership of what they're doing and grow. And we talk about making mistakes, and I'm quite happy. Well, happy, I don't know whether that's the right word, but, I almost expect people to make mistakes. We're a very new, small organization that's finding our feet, working out our role, and we're experimenting. And so there is an element of make mistakes and learn from them, because if we do that, and as we do that, we'll get to the right place. But I very much see, working together, getting people's opinion. I'm the only non-skateboarder on the staff. So again, when I'm making decisions and when we're looking at strategy, I very much involve the staff in that, because I can't work in isolation and sort of make decisions about direction and what we're going to do, because I'm not sort of part of that. And I don't, I'm part of it, but I don't have a deep understanding of the culture, whereas the staff do. So very much look to get their opinion as we move forward. But every day is different. You deal with different people and different things, and so I guess there's a different leadership style and in every situation that you come across.
But maybe the fact that you are not from a skateboarding background could also be beneficial, because maybe you have a different perspective on things, and then you have your team who might have the expertise knowledge, but then you can throw some new ideas in there and get them to maybe think about other options. Absolutely.
And I think that is really important, and that's certainly working well. And I'll often go to the staff and say, right, here's some ideas. This is something that I think we need to do. How do we do it? So using the skateboarding expertise to define and to shape how we do something is really important. But that external perception is needed, because I'll often say, well, why do we do that? Why is that so? Do we need to just change or adapt something? So yeah, you need those two. You need those two viewpoints.
While we're talking about the structure and the governance, I recently partnered with SIGA, which is the Sports Integrity Global Alliance. I don't know if you have heard about it. They work towards improved integrity in sport. Yeah. They have a program that is called SERVS, which is an independent rating system based on some pillars and good governance, for example. Yeah. So how are Skateboard GB working on your on good governance, for example? Are you taking some steps on that?
Yeah, so to get any sort of public funding, so to get any sort of governance funding, generally through UK Sport or Sport England, there's a governance code, and there's 3 tiers. And depending on which tier you are, depends or dictates how much money you get, or how much money you want, then dictates which tier you're at. So there's 1, 2, and there's 3 tiers. So the likes of the Football Association, the Rugby Union, tennis, athletics, they're all tier 3. Tier 1 is your entry point, and we're tier 2 at the moment, and we're working towards tier 3. So we take governance absolutely really seriously, and there's 5 pillars to sort of good governance from a code point of view. There's communications, there's structure, there's people, there's processes and policies, there's standards and conduct. So we work really seriously around those 5 pillars, and there's various requirements within those that we have to follow in order to be able to have the investment from government. So, but it's something that you're learning about all the time, and you're trying to be the best that you can be all the time. And but it's absolutely fundamental to everything that we do.
Yeah, that's great to hear. If we talk about young people who have aspirations to work in sports management, since this is the sports management podcast, what would be your best advice for someone with these aspirations?
Be absolutely passionate about sport. And I guess a lot of people are. I think that relationships are key. So build up relationships. LinkedIn's amazing. So to sort of find people and talk with people, understand sort of different roles and what the opportunities are. Working hard is really important, and I think for me that's probably the most important. You've got to put the graft in. Things don't happen overnight, and things take time, and relationships are key in that as you get respect and trust of people. I asked somebody at UK Sport a year or so ago sort of what my reputation was from a sort of a working point of view. And the word that came back was dogged.
Okay.
And I think I sort of took that as a compliment because the journey that we've had to go on. So 5 years ago in 2015-16, when we were talking with government funders about investment, it was made very clear that there wasn't going to be any investment for skateboarding. And yet we're now in a position where that's been absolutely turned on its head. And I think being dogged has come into that. Absolutely, you have to have the right arguments and do the right things, but being dogged, being persistent is really important. So I think that again is some advice that I would give. So work hard, relationships, be dogged, don't give up.
That's great advice. And I'm sure there have been some bumps on the road in your professional career. So could you maybe mention one of them and how you overcame them?
Bumps in the road. There's lots of bumps in the road all the time, and but I think that a lot of. I'm trying to think. Is there an example? I'll think of an example as I talk. But I think that in my career, in leadership positions in sport or in any walk of life, I think being open and honest is really important, and acting with integrity. And when I talk about integrity, I think what I'm talking about is that when you're involved in a governing body, you're not necessarily there to be popular, or you're not there to be popular. You're there to make the best decisions that you can for the sport. So I think that acting in integrity is being able to make those decisions and not be swayed by trying to be popular. And so I think that's sort of really important. And I think that's how I tend to overcome when there are bumps in the road, because the bumps in the road might be you've made a decision that people don't like, or you've done something that people don't like. And I think that's really hard in skateboarding, because people are so invested in skateboarding, because it's not just a sport to them, it's part of you. So if you're a skateboarder, skateboarding is part of you. So certainly around COVID and the shutting of skate parks, there was a lot of people that blamed us for that. There was miscommunication between government departments that meant that we were slightly isolated when the decision was made to close skate parks. Government made the decision, and we communicated that, thinking that it was going to be communicated in a certain way to certain people by some government departments, and that didn't happen. So we were then sort of isolated and blamed for the closing of skate parks. So I think that the communication or better communication would have been amazing at that stage, but that was sort of out of our control. In that circumstance, we just had to carry on and basically act in integrity and communicate the right things, even though we were getting blamed. So I guess that's a little bump.
So you just keep on working. It's based on what you said before with being relentless.
Yeah, absolutely. You've just got to keep, you know what the focus is. We know the direction we're going in. We know what we want to achieve. That's our focus. That's our goal. Try not to be sidetracked through other things or through people not liking what you're doing, because, we fundamentally believe that our strategic plan is right and good for skateboarding. So keep going in that direction, and we will achieve what we want to achieve.
You have worked in sports for quite some time. You were a bit unsure with the years there before, if it was 14 or 20 or 12 or...
It wasn't 20.
I'm sure you have built up a network within sports. So if you would suggest a guest for this podcast, who do you think that I should talk to?
I think a really interesting person that you would like to talk to is a guy called Nick Hounsfield. And he is the creator of the Wave in the UK, which is an inland wave complex. And they've got the GB surfing team that train there. And he's involved, I think he's chair of Surfing England. And he's been on an incredible journey. And he would definitely be worth talking to.
That sounds very interesting. I will definitely keep that in mind. Before we sign off here, is there something that I haven't mentioned that you would like to bring up? Could be about yourself or the Skateboard GB.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, I think that the thing that we're really excited about is the potential for purpose-led partnerships, and we're actively looking for those long-term partnerships with commercial organisations that we can help meet their objectives, but also help us to grow and achieve our aims. So, we're really keen to develop those. And we've got a fantastic partnership with Habito, and now starting to actively look and see who else we can work with in that world of commerce and commercial organisations. So keen, if anybody wants to, who's listening to this wants to have a conversation, we'll be really keen to do that.
Sure. How can they reach you?
By email. It's james@skateboardgb.org.
Perfect. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Sports Management Podcast.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Twitter or Instagram @sportsmpodcast.